Welcome to this episode of the AEC Engineering and Technology Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping engineering professionals find technology that fits their needs. In today's episode, which forms part of our Director of Innovation series, I'll be discussing the transformative impact of VR and AR technologies, the revolutionary IDEA program, and the integration of AI through MEG, an internal chatbot, with Mike Lawless, Vice President of Innovation at IMEG Corp. With that, let's jump into today's episode. It's now time for our conversation of the week with Mike Lawless. Mike, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
No, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. And Mike's an innovation leader in the industry, has a lot of great things going on. So we'll just jump right into it. Mike, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do on a daily basis at IMEG Corp?
Sure. So I've been with IMEG for, before we got on, we talked about it since 2000. So long history here. I've done a lot of different things in the firm. And about 3 years ago, I was asked to lead our innovation group. And really the goal there, the initial goal that was given to me was, 5 to 10 years from now, we want to make sure we're still positioned and have the right things in place to continue to be successful as a firm and continue to be successful in helping our clients, achieve the outcomes that they're looking for. And so I took that, and then you sort of have to turn it into what does it mean to me? What does it mean? Why do we innovate? And so our purpose statement is, together we create positive outcomes for people, communities, and our planet. So what I talk about is we don't just innovate to do cool stuff. I mean, sometimes we do cool stuff, but the whole goal of the innovation is to help create those positive outcomes.
Well said, Jim. I think it is easy to get lost, right, in shiny object syndrome, chasing bright stars, right? But at the end of the day, the whole point of what individuals on the innovation side of companies is to just make it better for whatever particular reason. And like you stated, those are IMEG's kind of outcomes that you guys are looking for.
Yeah, and I think, the other thing with innovation is, I'm all for action. I think a lot of times, there can be a lot of discussions or ideas, but until you put things into place and put them into action, you really haven't had an impact. So we're pretty focused on taking good ideas and making them actionable, and then putting them into place with the firm and having them get used. If you put great tools together and nobody uses them, you also haven't had an impact. So it's not only taking an idea and making it actionable, it's also how do you the people part of it is super important. And how do you spread that word throughout the firm and get people excited about it and get them using it.
And speaking of, idea to implementation, right? I'm curious to hear more about your guys' internal AI chatbot, right? So of course, this was an idea at some point. It sounds like it's had some pretty successful implementation, but what can you tell us about it and how it's changing the way your team works?
So we've developed an internal chatbot. I think there's a lot of, everywhere you look, somebody's talking about AI, and one of the parts of AI, or one of the ways is large language models. And so we looked at, we were getting questions and different things on some of the information that we have internally available, and how do we make that more accessible, and how do we query some of this great, documentation and things we put together. So we developed a chatbot. We're IMEG, so the chatbot is called MEG. My wife's name is Megan, and so when I told her this is what they sort of decided on for the name, she's like, "Okay, you got to be kidding me," So we put this together, and it's MEG is available in Teams. So just like a Teams chat, you can chat with MEG and ask questions, and really a couple things. One, if you want to know what the holidays are that IMEG has for 2024, it can tell you that. It can pull that data. But I think more importantly is on the engineering side. I think a lot of companies have SharePoint sites and repositories for data, and we have that. And as issues arise or we have lessons learned, we put that data there. But if you look at, as we're putting MEG together, I started to look at some of those SharePoint sites, and I'm looking at some of this great technical data we have, and 20 people have looked at it in the last 3 years. And so once to the point I made earlier, are you really having an impact with what you put together if no one, if people aren't looking at it? So now you can ask MEG questions, and it doesn't only return an answer, But it also, the super important thing is it gives the engineers access to that data. And a couple things, for young engineers, we have a great mentorship program and history of mentorship, but chatbots are very non-judgmental. And if you want to just ask a question and start to learn, it's a great way to do that. And then if you get involved in a more complex situation, you can easily go in there and ask that question and get the data. Now, this doesn't eliminate the experts we have and access to those experts, but it's a starting point in a way that folks can interact with some of the great information that we have.
Mike, a couple of great points I just want to reiterate for the audience. So one, right, a large language model, similar to a chat GPT that you'd see on the open market, right? Trained specifically on your company's data. You're providing your staff access to be able to ask these questions, but it sounds like your chatbot's also providing sources so they can verify what needed. And then the last point you made, right, not replacing, rather supplementing the expertise of all your experienced and talented staff.
Oh, great! That's a perfect summary. Yep. No, that's exactly what we've done. And I think the one thing I would add is, with Chat GPT, your staff is going to use that. They're going to ask Chat GPT questions. So another piece of this is, with MEG, it's a curated data set that we've said, hey, this is good data, and it's not going out and searching the general web. It's a focused data set. So it also gives a little bit more control over what we use to answer those questions.
Right, and security as well, right? Because it's not only what it's ingesting, right? It's what is going out, right? Is some proprietary information being used as a training set by some company and you have no idea what it's doing, right?
Right, yeah. It keeps the questions and the data that we have out of the general training set that other large language models might use as well. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, just well summarized, because like you said, right, individuals and staff are going to go out, see what useful tools are out there, and they're going to use it, and that can be hard to control. But by getting ahead of the problem with your AI strategy, right, you're now saying, hey, like, here are the bounds you can work in, and we're still going to provide you what you need.
And I think, yes, and it's also sets us up. So, right now we're looking at, some of our HR data for, for holidays and those sorts of things, and some of our engineering expertise. But, we really see it as a portal into all of our data going forward. Project, expanded into project data and other things where you can ask questions about, hey, what project has this type of system, or, those types of things as well. So, has a lot of use cases. And I think even beyond that, if you think about at a project level, or if you've got clients that are utilizing buildings, I think the same sort of setup could help folks access information on the building that they're operating, or the building that they maybe have renovated, over and over the years. Now you've got this large set of data that you want to comb through to help, resolve an issue or renovate that project.
Absolutely. And great points. And Mike, and you've got me thinking, right? Like, where do all of these great ideas come from? And I want to talk about the idea program at IMEG, right? So what impact has it had on the company, and kind of like, how did it originate and where did it come from?
Yeah. So when I took on the role, I think it's, 3 years ago, I took on this role leading innovation, and, it's like, this role didn't exist. So I talked a little bit earlier about, what's the why for innovation. So we put that together. We've got a great history of innovation. We've done a lot of really innovative projects and done a lot of great things through the years. So it's like, how do we build on that? And not, I didn't want to create a small group of people that was innovative. I wanted to continue to grow the innovation that we already had through the firm. And so the idea program, the way that works is we take folks from our teams. We've got 90 or so teams across the country. We've got folks, and they say, I'm interested in innovation, or they have a certain idea. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Then they come off of their team, come off of that day-to-day work for, call it 4 to 8 months, and they work on innovation projects and advance those projects. And then they go back to their team. And so part of this isn't only so not only do we advance in, some innovation initiatives, we also are starting to continue to grow that network of spreading that information throughout the firm. Because I think, that's any kind of communication in a firm of our size becomes a challenge. And so building out those networks and, what I say is you send an email out, some people are going to look at that. But if we think about how we win work and sell work, you don't send an email and win a project. It's about interacting with people. And so the big part of that idea network is building that network so people have someone they can call to say, hey, who can help me do this? And it's Abby or Laura or Colin, they've been part of the program. They know that technology, and they can help them, help them put it to use on their project.
It's almost like spreading the innovation gospel, right? Because it's just word of mouth referrals, right? Like, hey, my neighbor gets his lawn cut or his gutters cleaned by company XYZ, and you're taking the same basic approach, right? And saying, hey, like, I worked with Mike's team for a couple months. These are the tools we developed. I brought them back to my day-to-day project work, and it's really made a difference, right? Now take that compared to email saying, hey, we have new XYZ tool. Let me know if you have any questions, right? And like we talked about, right? Sometimes implementation can be the hardest part of any innovation strategy.
Oh, no. Yeah, absolutely agree. And the other part of it is that, so we talk about impacting the company, when you have a group like that, and we've got mechanical, electrical, we've got structural, we've got civil engineers, we have acoustic, we have all these, full service engineering companies. So we get groups from those different areas, and we get the advantage of them working together and seeing kind of that cross-pollination. But then as far as the efforts that we advance, it can be pretty varied as well. I think we had an engineer with our first group who was really interested in embodied carbon. And so she really led putting together some tools around embodied carbon in that offering and how we use that with our clients. And now she really, that's really where she's evolved in her role, is that's what she works on. I think there's some questions maybe later on virtual reality, all that started in the idea program. So it's been a nice path, and it also is a good outlet for, creative, maybe more risk-taking engineers to try something a little bit different as part of their career.
Absolutely. And Mike, you read my mind, because my next question is about VR and AR, virtual and augmented reality. So it seems like you guys have had success specifically impacting the way clients interact with their construction projects. But could you elaborate on that more and give us some specific examples?
Sure. So we've been looking at and working with augmented reality, virtual reality for some time. I would say that in the last 6 months or so, I think there's sort of been, the software has improved, and then the hardware price point and capabilities have improved as well. And so it feels like we're getting closer and closer to more mainstream use of, especially on the virtual reality side. And so from a virtual reality standpoint, one of the things the way that I think about it is we have these great models that we do, and we put all this great 3D content into those models. Virtual reality just helps us take more advantage of what we already have. And so one of the example that I sent you a video on it of our medical we have a medical equipment planning group. They have a great set of equipment models, and so they fully LOD 400 model all the medical equipment on their projects. So we recently had there was a client, and there were some challenges getting some agreement on how one of their spaces was going to function. And so what we did was we put it into virtual reality. They had in that instance, they had 50 plus people that were in these virtual meetings. And so we actually we had our folks in the headsets, and the people in the meeting were the ones really directing the changes. And so they had really struggled to coalesce around, here's how this was going to function and how it was going to work. And we were able to, in VR, really help them see it a little bit more clearly and get to a resolution on that, something they were struggling with a little bit.
Which is really just like, I would say, a very basic use case of something I talk about a lot, right? Is clients understand like 3D and the physical world around us. 2D prints are a little bit foreign and honestly more useful to design and construction teams, right? So when you can provide that immersive 3D experience, and to paint a picture to the audience, essentially, right, like this medical equipment, instead of being a rectangle on plan modeled to level of development 400, as Mike said, you can essentially use virtual and augmented reality to, short of it being there in front of your face in person, understand the look, the shape, the feel, and how it interacts with the existing environment, which, Mike, it sounds like your clients are really liking that use of technology your group has employed.
Yeah. So we did survey them, but before I share the survey part, part of our goal with the virtual reality, there's like, you can go online and look at cool videos where people have used virtual reality on different projects and on big projects. Part of our goal with our virtual reality process was to make it something we could do, every day on every project, where it's a simple, repeatable process. And so we've gotten to that point, and that's what we employed on the project that I was discussing. But so we surveyed the client, after we went through the process, and just, you don't know what kind of responses you're going to get, but I would say we probably couldn't have made up better feedback than what we got. I think we got 11 people responded that if you average all the ratings, we got a 9.7 out of 10 on it being helpful. And to your point, a lot of the comments were around, on 2D, I really struggled, to see it. This really helped me to see it in virtual reality. So like I said, the hardware and software are advancing. If, to me, if it's something you're not looking at, it's something to consider, because just the price point of all the things that have really come to a place where I think it could be used more than it is right now in our industry.
And Mike, is there any specific hardware that you guys would use or recommend, just to give the audience a flavor of what's out there?
Sure. So we've got a number of things. The Quest 3 is what we use for this particular effort. So those are, that's about $500 for a headset, and it's not connected by wires to the computer. So you have some more freedom, and you can, I think, you can walk around with it on and experience it that way. So if you experience virtual reality 5 or 6 years ago, it's very different now than what it was then. So I would just encourage you to not, hey, try it again. It's in definitely a better place. I think a lot of us have been using this and saw it used, 5 years ago plus, and it maybe didn't take off the way then that we thought it would. I think it's come a long way.
Absolutely. And Mike, my next question relates more to strategy than it does any specific technology. So we talked about the idea program. You have what sounds like a pretty constant stream of ideas coming in, but then how do you evaluate them, making sure the ideas align with the company's vision, and then basically what exactly you're trying to accomplish through the program?
Sure. So when we talked about the vision and things, translating into that a little bit more of an actionable strategy. So we talk about the outcome, and if you look at a building, the design, is 1% of the overall cost of the life cycle of that building. What they spend on the design team, you got construction is 10%, you've got renovation, but the operational phase is, 60% or so of that life cycle, that cost. So when we looked at, we've primarily been a design engineering firm. We've got some services outside of that, and we continue to build on those. But really, what it looks like to me from a strategy standpoint is, how do we, as engineers, impact that entire life cycle? What we do in the design impacts all that. And I think we could, as engineers, really provide guidance and advice and services throughout. So really it's looking at how do we use technology throughout the entire life cycle of a project to impact that outcome. And to a large degree, you sort of wrap, planning, design, and construction around that outcome piece that's in the middle. That's the biggest part of it. And we've got a graphic that we use that sort of shows that, but that's really, from a strategy standpoint, what where we're headed. Now, on the how do we evaluate ideas part of it, as your innovation group matures, that becomes more and more of a question, because you have more and more ideas and different places where resources want to be put together. So we do have a filter that we use, that we've developed, that we put it together. We looked at, hey, here's some of the things we've done in the past. Let's run those through the filter. What does that look like? And then as new ideas come in, we can say, okay, let's just take a break, run it through the filter, evaluate it, and see, is this where we want to invest, time and effort as far as advancing those goals of using technology through the life cycle of the project.
Which makes a lot of sense because in my experience, right, it's really easy to come up with ideas, but then actually taking it through the entire life cycle is a lot more time consuming and requires a larger investment. But it sounds like you guys have a relatively structured way to make sure ideas are considered, but also make sure they align with what you're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. And I think, all of us, sometimes we take on initiatives and we see them through and we do them. And the whole time you're a little bit like, is this, we're going to do it. We've committed to doing it at this point, but was this the right thing? And maybe not the right thing, but was it the best thing? Is it the most efficient? As engineers, it's like, how do we most efficiently use our resources? And when we put the filter together and we kind of checked it against some of our previous initiatives, those ones where, you kind of had that feeling, also graded out that it was like, oh yeah, that was maybe a little bit, on the borderline, or maybe in hindsight, maybe that wasn't the right one to pick. But it's innovation. You're never going to pick things 100% right all the time. And, we've talked about a lot of positive things. There's a lot of things we've done that haven't worked out as well as we would have liked to. And that's just the nature of innovation. If you don't have some things that fail, then you probably aren't trying enough things either.
Agreed. But let's talk about something that sounds like it has worked and you guys have seen success with. One of my favorite topics, 360 cameras. So can you share like a specific example of how the initiative was successful and how it benefited a product or a client?
Yeah, sure. So I've been reading some of your posts on 360 cameras and really enjoying them and think they make a really good point. So it's been probably about 2 years ago. We've used 360 cameras, different teams have in the firm, and about 2 years ago, we really kind of started looking into that, or started as we're an innovation group. We've got small pockets of people using a tool that's pretty effective. How do we spread that to the firm? So we'll talk about how we kind of spread it first, and then I can give a couple examples. But as far as spreading it to the firm, we have a corporate meeting where we bring all of our leaders of our teams. We have client executives that lead each one of our teams. So we came to that meeting with a 360 camera for each leader of each team. And so one of the presentations was, hey, here's some easy to use things you can do with the 360 cameras. If you want one, we have one for you. And, probably 90% of the people or 85% of the folks there came and got one. And I would say, as time went on, all of them have them. But we started with about 60 of the 360 cameras. And I think now we've got probably 160 of them spread out through the teams. And I think the interesting thing is with these sorts of things is you introduce a tool, you don't know all the ways it's going to get used. And so, there's folks are skeptical and those sorts of things, but our civil engineering group took one, and I think they'd even say they were a little skeptical on how it was going to get used, but they shared it with their survey teams, and the survey teams are like, "This is amazing." And so, one of the next, as they got into it and used it, then we got a camera. All of our survey trucks have a 360 camera on them, and it's just such an easy tool to use, and helps them be more efficient. But to the client perspective, we use it on a lot of projects, and probably one of the more consistent ways we get benefit or comment from clients is we'll have clients say, in meetings, well, when's IMEG going to be out there again with the 360 camera so we can look at this issue with the latest, information on what was captured. And one of the things about the image capture is you can bring, 30 people on a meeting can all look at the same thing at the same time and make decisions, where you could never get 30 people above a ceiling to look at something or into a, confined space and those sorts of things. So, from a project impact standpoint, that's one of the the easy impacts to talk about is just bringing the team together around the right information to make decisions or understand what the challenge is that the team's facing.
Love it, Mike. And to your example, right, they're so versatile because using, right, often the comparison that's made is like, hey, drone versus 360 camera. You can have the best of both worlds, but a 360 camera doesn't require a pilot's license, doesn't require FAA clearance, right? Very simple to use. And we're talking, right, fishing rods, selfie sticks, hard hat mounts. I mean, you can get really creative with how this tool is used. And to your point, like, clients love them. It gives them an immersive, more 3D-like experience than looking at a set of plans and 2D pictures. And I think it's just great because it balances efficiency, ease of use, and cost.
Oh, yeah, no, totally agree with that. And what we talk about is use the right tool for the right, in the right situation. So we have drones, we have laser scanners, we have Matterport, we have all this range of things. But the 360 camera is super cost effective, super easy to use. And just to share a real brief story, we had some engineers that were using them, and one was really excited about it, and she comes over to talk to me. And so we have these halo lights we use with them that really give a nice light. And she's like, I was out doing field work. I wasn't tall enough to see over the duct, but I could just use my selfie stick in the light and just put the camera up there, look at it on my phone. I was able to figure out, almost using it like a periscope, like a live periscope while you're out there. And then you get to capture the images as well. And I'm like, that's awesome. And it's just like, you provide folks with these tools, they're going to find a million ways to use them that you never would have thought of.
Absolutely. And the halo lights, I've had experience with, Mike, the Bushman panoramic, those are great for above ceiling shots. And then we do a lot of park and garage work. So the ILLUMIGEAR with kind of a ring light around the hard hat with the camera on top makes for a very nice combination.
Yeah, we use the same. We use the same 360 light. And the other thing, like our folks, I don't know if, is like on the civil side, you can stick it down like a storm inlet and all those sorts of things and take pictures of, inside of all, manholes, all that kind of stuff too. Pipes.
Absolutely. You could even go as far in some instances, you can attach them to a drone, and maybe there's some confined space work that's a little bit easier to do. We've literally fished them over parapet walls, just trying to get a better look at facade conditions. So again, the use cases are almost endless.
Yep, and they're they're about $400. So you don't have to save much time to make up for the cost.
Absolutely, and I think that's a key consideration, right? As an innovation leader, a firm owner, recognizing that these tools can very quickly get you that return on investment. As long as you're understanding how your staff is made more efficient using them.
No, totally agree.
Mike, again, it's been a pleasure having you on. This has been a great discussion on some tools, tactics, and strategy. But what final piece of advice would you give the engineers listening that are looking to make significant impact in the construction industry through innovation?
Yeah, and I'll go back to something I talked about a little bit before. And this is maybe more to, folks that are leading innovation, is there's a lot of great technology out there, but to me, the advice I would give is focus on the people. How do you get the folks, the engineers up to speed on some of these new things? How do you improve adoption? To me, focusing on your people is the path to success. I think when I look to the future, there's going to be a lot of things that are different than they are now, and things are going to change, and they're changing probably more quickly, now than they have in a long time. And it's really, until I guess at some point maybe AI will completely replace people. It feels like that's a little bit off in the future, but until then, we're going to need people to use all this technology. So I think focusing on the people is a very important piece of the puzzle.
Completely agree, Mike. And AI is not signing and sealing anything anytime soon, as far as I'm aware. So the need for people, I think, is always going to be there. It's just how our roles change and evolve is to be determined. But Again, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. If the listeners have any questions for you about anything we talked about or just want to catch up in general, how can they connect with you?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn. Happy to, feel free to message me there, or if you want to include my email, it's michael.j.lawless@imegcorp.com. So either one works great for me.
Beautiful. So for those who didn't have a pen handy, we'll include those in the show notes. And Mike, thank you so much again for taking the time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely. Till next time. Please remember, you can find the show notes for this episode at aectechpodcast.com. There, you will find a summary of key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, I wish you the best in all of your engineering and technology endeavors. Thank you.